Welcome to the Powerlifting and Power Ballads podcast, where we bring you a weekly dose of powerlifting news, tips, and training advice with a touch of 80s rock ballads. This podcast is presented by Team Roar Powerlifting, your source of the most comprehensive coaching and meet day preparation. Here are your hosts, Josh Rohr and Laura Sturm.
All right, welcome to episode 212 of the Powerlifting and Power Ballads podcast. 2 weeks ago, we had interviews with all the presidential candidates. Last week, we had an interview with Heather Foss, the executive director for USA Powerlifting. And this week, we have Dr. Larry Maile, the current president of USA Powerlifting. Larry, how you doing?
So far, so good.
Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of get your, I guess, basically open floor here, but kind of get your perspective on, a couple things. I mean, the legacy you're leaving behind as president, but also what you see as the future of USA Powerlifting, and maybe even if you want to weigh in on what you think are qualities or important aspects for the new president to have or address. Basically, whatever comes to mind.
Sure. Open to all.
All right. So I guess we'll start with a softball question here. What are you most proud of, I guess, during your tenure as president?
I thought about that a lot. And, and part of that is going to sort of composing my farewell speech, sort of my farewell tour here. But, there are a lot of things, I think, and I guess I would break them up into sort of general things and then some more specific things. In terms of the general things, I think I'm most proud of basically holding the line and exercising Brother Bennett's vision that there be a clean platform and that it continue into the future, obviously long after his death, and that we continue to hold those standards. Generally speaking, too, I'm proud of the fact that we have weathered a number of things which have been significant. Our divorce from the IPF being one, our facing competition of other federations out there, and in general, upgrading the quality of competition for people, which led to significant increases in membership. People are interested in us. So those are kind of the big picture general things. Specifically, sort of on the individual level, the thing I have most enjoyed, I think, is working with athletes over time. And I said once that I coached 57 internationals, but more than that, I've worked with a number of gifted athletes, and many of them are in the Hall of Fame. Many of them have multiple national championships, and American records and world records, and to work with that quality of gifted athletes has been a gift over the years. I was fortunate enough to coach a team that won 8 national championships for women. That was a significant milestone, especially coming from Alaska. So that was significant kind of on an individual level. I am less than a elite level lifter, but I was fortunate enough to compete in the national championships and North American championships and world championships as well as a competitor. And I feel like that's critical. If you're going to coach, you should compete. If you're going to be an administrator, you should compete. Otherwise, you don't have a sense of what's important for the athletes themselves. So as sort of a brief summary, those are things that have been important to me over the years.
So I guess why now? I guess what's the reason for stepping away at this point? Just getting old and
yeah, old. That's one thing. I'll be 67 this year. But really, I think in some ways it's the weight of time, and the work having done this job. This will be my 22nd year as president. I was on the executive committee before that, and I started as a state chair in the early 1980s, really at our beginning. And, I have a sense that just like in the US government, our governance has to involve a peaceful transition of power and ushering in a new generation who hold the same values. And it feels like to me that it's time um, for the next generation to pick up, and younger people with newer vision and better skills to take the reins and lead us forward into the future.
You mentioned earlier Brother Bennett. I want to make it a point to discuss him with all these interviews as much as possible, because I think the further away we get from him, further away we get from your time period, I think it's I don't know if it's likely, but it's a possibility that we kind of lose sight of what his mission was, and I don't want that to happen. So, do you want to kind of talk about him a little bit and just kind of maybe talk about what I mean, I think everybody knows that USA Powerlifting is, and you already mentioned it, it's meant to be a drug-free platform at every level. But, I don't think we can talk about that aspect enough. So maybe you want to mention a little bit about that.
Sure. I'll talk about that, and I'll talk about um, how my experience has dovetailed with it. Um, Brother Bennett, as you know, was the first president of the American Drug-Free Powerlifting Association, and that's who we still are. Um, but Brother Bennett, before the ADFPA started, was a national meet director, ran meets in the dominant federations at that time. And one of his discouragements and disappointments was the extreme level of drug use that was involved in it, and the consequences for those who did so. And as that dovetails with my experience in the 1970s, I know that's like a million years ago, but I started training in a pretty hardcore gym with a pretty hardcore bunch of people, and all of them were using. Um, and and what I can say about that and what has colored my experience is that they're all dead now. Um, and many of them died far too young, um, due to things that are consequences of their heavy drug use. And so that's colored my vision. But more importantly, Brother Bennett saw a reasonable alternative, which I embraced, basically, that it was possible to do powerlifting in heavy strength sports and lift consistently without the use of drugs, and in a way that embraced both a healthy lifestyle, um, but in general, a lifelong pursuit of health. And that was really his vision. And he and the founders of the ADFPA saw founding the Federation as an alternative to what was happening out there. It started small. The first nationals was women's nationals in Alabama, um, and it grew from there. And Brother Bennett's vision was that in offering that alternative, he would provide the opportunity for people to um, discontinue using, never start using, um, and that they could come here and have a fair chance to showcase their natural talents at whatever level they were. And specifically, that was that their athletic ability would be associated with their placings and their success, rather than how good of a chemist they were and how much they were willing to sacrifice health wise, to reach the top of the podium. So Brother Bennett recruited people, a number of people who saw the world in his way, and some of those were early competitors in other federations, whose experiences were so negative that they wanted to put together something that was entirely different, and that's what they did. Um, their initial tenet was, excuse me, that people should be drug free, um, that they should embrace that lifestyle, and if they had used in the past, that they could clean up and this would be a place for them as well. And it grew really exponentially in the 80s and 90s. We've had multiple peaks and valleys membership wise, but one of those peaks was in the late 80s into the early 90s when a number of lifters at multiple levels came over to us because of what we represented and who we were. And that transition continued really to our biggest peak, which was a couple of years ago. We have focused on other things then, and powerlifting really in the 70s and 80s was kind of rudimentary in terms of competitions. But we've continued to fine tune it. We've continued to up the production and support meet directors so that the experience of athletes when they come to a competition is a positive one. And that really is what Brother Bennett was all about, that lifters have a place to go where they could make friends. And many of the people I started with in the ADFPA remain friends. And that's true for many of us. This really is family. Um, and getting together at a national meeting always was and still is a family reunion. So that's kind of that ethic that we hold, and it was given to us directly from Brother Bennett. I guess that's my summary of my experience with him. Other than to say one thing, um, Brother Bennett really, in some ways, was a very kind, very gentle man, but he also had nerves of steel, and he was willing to face down difficult controversies to preserve the mission and to keep his dream alive. And that, looking ahead to what you might ask later, will be required of my successor, both kindness and engagement, um, but the ability to make really difficult decisions sometimes.
Yeah.
One of the things that people will ask, I suspect, are sort of what are the challenges we faced in the past and what are they now? And what
That's
do I?
literally my next question I was about to ask.
Yeah, well, fire away.
Well, you already asked it basically. So yeah, what are the biggest challenges that you've seen during your tenure? And I guess, what are some of the things that you see potentially could be coming down the road that are going to be challenges for the next president and leadership in general, but also like, well, we'll go with that. We'll start with that part.
Okay. We faced a number of challenges over the years, and certainly probably the first of them was getting off the ground and having people really believe that we do this, that we really do drug test, and we really do suspend people for drug testing, and it really is transparent. You can see who we test and you can see who fails, and so that was initially a challenge, and it essentially has been overcome by time because we've really done it so long, and we have a drug testing database, and you can see who we test and everyone we test. And um, that was an initial challenge. The growth and the reaching out to meet directors initially was a challenge, and it was a challenge because, as you are probably aware, previous federations had the mindset that drug testing was something that we did so that we could pass the test. Interestingly enough, another federation president once offered to connect me with a physician so I could pass the test whenever I wanted to. That was their mentality. And so finding people who were like-minded, who really did believe that it was important to have a drug-free platform was a challenge for us. Um, As we transitioned and became an affiliate of the IPF, in some ways we lost our way, and that was a continuing challenge. And really the continuing challenge, the challenge continued up until the point where we separated from the IPF, and the problem was multifold, I think. As you are aware from history, powerlifting as official competition started in the United States. But the United States lost control of it as well, and that has been to our detriment. So one of the challenges has always been governance with international federations, and honestly, they don't see things the way we do. Um, they don't see the need for drug testing that is sufficiently effective and pervasive, it occurs at every level, to change the whole environment. And that was a challenge from the beginning of our affiliation with the IPF, and it continued to be a challenge. And unfortunately, it's a challenge for the IPF right now because drug testing in the IPF is essentially window dressing. When you can have a meet with 1,000 lifters and do no testing, you have failed.
What are, I guess, some of the reasons, some of the things that, you know, led to the split? I know I think some of that's kind of common knowledge, but like, I think it comes down to more of a fundamental values thing. And I don't know if you want to talk on that a little bit.
Sure. Because people generally know about it, I'll just summarize that briefly. And we split from the IPF because we were unwilling to, in essence, surrender our drug testing budget to them in exchange for them monitoring drug testing, us having no control, and at the end of the day, doing less than 10% of the drug test we do now. There's actually a reason why we test 10%, and it's empirically based. That was the reason for the split, and in essence, we wouldn't capitulate, nor would we honestly surrender the money, which was a gigantic mid-six-figure amount of money every year. That's the reasons for the split. But one of the difficulties, and it always has been sort of a difficulty with our prior affiliate, is that they have lost sight of what they're doing it for. And let me be specific. IOC recognition in some ways is positive, but in other ways it really benefits a minority of lifters. Nobody at the grassroots level, honestly, and some elite lifters, and very few of them. And the quest for IOC recognition started in 1998 that I know of. That's when I was first exposed to it. But in service to that goal, our prior affiliate lost their way, and they, in essence, would have done and will do anything for that recognition, whether it be sacrificing clean lifters, whether it be capitulating to external influences, and that's not service to the lifters. That's service to something else. And a lot of times it's service to the egos of the people involved. One thing I will tell you is that the IOC doesn't want to take on another drug-laden sport. And let's be realistic, powerlifting worldwide is a drug-laden sport. It occurs at every level. The IOC has heavy activities in track and field and multiple sports, including weightlifting, that have well identified drug problems historically. And until an organization is willing to meaningfully clean it up at every level, and actually make a legitimate effort to be a clean sport, the IOC won't have anything to do with them.
Yeah, and that to me, that's always been the catch 22. I don't know if it's catch 22, but like you test less, you have less positives.
Yep.
So you look better on paper, and I think that's one side of the coin. Or you test and we try to catch people, and we do have some failures because we've caught people. That's the other side of the coin. Well, this one kind of looks better, but in reality, it's allowing people through the cracks.
Yep.
And that's been the thing that's always just not set right with me about how that was done in the past.
Yeah. I always said that in USA powerlifting, we're in the catching business. We're not in the testing business because we actually want to catch you if you're using.
Right.
This is not the place for you. Um, Interestingly enough, I have a number of really good friends that lift in the unlimited federations, and I have over the years. And what makes that possible is the fact that they realize that we're doing something different, and that if people are going to use, they should come to them, and if they're not, they want not to use and they want to be clean, they send them to us, and no harm, no foul. It's not really a moral argument for us. We're not condemning anyone for doing what they want to do. We just don't want them to do it here.
Right.
Um, but your point is well taken. And here's the fallacy of the argument of we don't test very much and therefore we have no positives. The IOC has access to drug testing data from every lab in the world. So they can really see sport by sport. When we fill out a chain of custody form, we put on there what sport that is. They can actually see what it looks like in every sport. And if you test 200 people and you have two positives, that looks like two positives until you realize that you've actually across the world done 10,000 tests, and of those, 750 were positive. That looks like a whole different animal. Uh, that's the data that they have.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I guess are we going down the same road again? And I guess let me explain what I'm asking here. So the IDFPA is in its infancy right now, and
Yes.
that's going to be our new affiliate internationally. And currently it was, US founded, right? Is it a scenario where that could possibly become no longer in our control and it be the same situation, do you think, or are we learning from our mistakes and doing it differently?
We're learning from our mistakes. One of the things written into the prospective bylaws of the IDFPA is that the president will always be a U.S. resident. Um, and so that the coalitions that occur in other federations, i.e., in Europe, etc., can't happen. One of the things that was a failing, and I understand the reasons, is the sort of one country, one vote model, which allows essentially buying and selling of votes. And so we're looking at that very carefully. Not that we want to deny the perspective of countries that come and join the IDFPA, but we never want them to have a situation where they can say, we are now taking over because we have 51% of the votes, and therefore, all of you, the US leadership, you're out. I think we have to stay true to the fact that it must always be centered here. If it's going to not lose its way, as virtually every other federation, including our prior affiliate, the WDFPF, has done.
Okay, so what are some areas, I guess, that you think the organization, both USA Powerlifting and the IDFPA, can still improve on?
Well, then I've said probably decades now that the biggest challenge for USA powerlifting is grassroots, and grassroots is where all the lifters are, and grassroots is what is important in terms of bringing people into the sport and ultimately keeping them in the sport. The challenge for us is developing a reasonable progression for people. And we obviously have nationals we've implemented, and they've grown much more successful regional meets. Um, and we are implementing world championships. We need to continue that trend so that the progression looks full. As we originally envisioned the North American Regional Federation, that it provide a stepping stone and provide additional international opportunities for people um, who couldn't necessarily make a world team. Um, that will be a challenge, but we need to make it happen. Those are some of the challenges. Another of the challenges, and spoken to it sort of obliquely, I think, in NGB meetings, but it's been our mission for a number of years, probably dating back to the 2013, 14, 15-ish, to transition from a system where the board of directors is actually the employees to a system where the board of directors is involved in governance and policy setting and strategic planning, but not the day-to-day activities. And to hire and to maintain a professional staff who do the day-to-day work, but are well in touch with the lifters and are the lifters, in fact. Um, and we've been fairly successful at that, recruiting as we moved away from Columbia City, Indiana, to national office in Anchorage, hiring employees and contractors who were heavily invested because they're lifting too. Um, that is going to be critical in the future, I think, because in all honesty, uh, a board shouldn't be meddling in day-to-day affairs if you have competent people under you, and I believe that we do. But sometimes a board of directors, an executive committee like ours, loses track of the things that a board should be doing. And those specifically are looking to the future, looking where we want to be in 5 and 10 years, what we want to brand ourselves as, how we want to be seen by posterity, those kinds of things, really. And if you're involved in the day-to-day activities, we're all worker bees, you can't do that, really. You get lost in the minutia, and the minutia is for staff.
Yeah. Do you have any, I don't want to say regrets, but I guess, is there one thing that, let me phrase it this way. Is there one aspect of your presidency that you felt like you would have done differently, or is there anything that you felt like anybody else in that role would not have done that was a positive? I don't know. Does that question make sense? It makes sense in my head, but as I say it out loud, I'm not sure if it does.
Um,
What was your biggest positive, or your biggest strength and your biggest weakness as president? Maybe that's a good way to put it.
Probably to handle weaknesses first. Probably like a lot of people involved in nonprofit boards, I have a life outside of here, and that has made me not always as available for periods of time that I could have been. Um, I'm despite the fact that I talk for a living, um, sometimes um, it, I haven't engaged as well with people as I could have, and I go to meets and I used to have my stump the president sort of sessions. Anyone in the audience can ask whatever questions they want, or they can come see me, or we can go have a beer in the bar or whatever. A lot of people don't take me up on that, and I think that in some ways, um, I have not been as approachable as I could have. I think that that's a weakness. And when I look at when I compare myself basically to Brother Bennett, um, he did much better in terms of kind of being a man of the people than I have been. Um, by the same token, um, my strengths have been dealing with challenges and really what I kind of laughingly refer to as the backside of powerlifting that people don't see and really people shouldn't see at every level because they just want to lift and have a good time. And so they don't need to know about the contentiousness over drug testing failures and um, the, the safe sport and the code of conduct complaints and the lawsuits, of which there have been many um, that could have developed. Um, as you know, Josh, professionally, I've been a forensic psychologist, and so a good deal of that has been working with attorneys and negotiating reasonable outcomes, and that has applied here. And I think that in a lot of ways saved us a lot of heartache and money and really negative press. And so I guess I would say keeping the ship afloat and dealing with challenges that aren't really seen has probably been my strength.
You mentioned like lawsuits, so we're still in the Minnesota lawsuit.
Yes, we
With
are.
you stepping down as president, I guess, how does that look going forward? Will you still be involved in that case? Are you basically washing your hands of it now that you're not going to be president, or how does that work? I'm genuinely asking because I don't know.
Um, I will continue to be involved in the Minnesota case because I'm essentially a principal in that suit. Um, and honestly, I have the history of where it's come and where the policies were developed and how they were developed. Um, and so whether I want to be or not, I have to be. But I want to be because we're fighting the right fight. The right fight is another extension of fairness for us, a level playing field for people, and protecting essentially what is a protected class. And while people may well not see it that way, that's in essence our argument that um, in terms of biology there are differences and we have to account for them some way. We have to make it fair for everybody as best we are able, and we do that with age groups and we do it with weight classes and we do it with sex divisions based on sex. Um, and we do it for collegiates and high schools. And this is another area where we have to define fairness in a way that follows the science. Um, and I'll continue to be involved in that. Like I said, even though I have to, I want to. It's important.
Cool. What are so I'm nervous. Like we have 5 people that are running for president. To my knowledge, maybe there's more. I know of 5, and we interviewed 5. Um, I know all of them. I have no, I guess, concerns with any of them, but part of me is nervous because, what you said, 22 years? Is that how long you were president?
Yes.
Yeah. So we've had the same steady hand at the wheel, I guess. So it makes me a little bit nervous having somebody new. I mean, obviously that's necessary to have turnover and new blood come in, but I guess what is from your seat and knowing some of the things that the president has to deal with, what are you most concerned about uh, going forward? Not with any one individual, just with a new individual stepping in as president.
Um, when somebody gets elected to the executive committee, I always say congratulations and I'm sorry. Um, and that's because they've obviously won the position. But it's also because they are about to step into a storm. And the storm really is multifaceted. It's an organization with a long history. It's an organization that has faced a number of challenges. It's an organization that has a number of precedents for really very good reasons, some legal, some economic. some in terms of our mission, and whoever steps in is going to have to get up to speed fast. When I was in the military and I was a commander for a period of time, it was necessary for the new commander to report to the base early and spend 18 hours a day trying to figure out what exactly was going on and what the mission was. The new president is not going to have that luxury, I think, just having a warm-up time, because they're going to be in it immediately. Prior experience with governance, honestly, in USA powerlifting at the inside level will be helpful. But the capacity to learn fast will be necessary. The willingness to accept things and not come in and kick the can over and try to change everything will be necessary, because first, it won't be possible. There are good reasons why things are this way, whether people agree with them or not. They exist for a reason. And if the person is essentially complaint-based and wants to change everything, I suspect they will tear the organization apart from the inside. So they're going to have to maintain that steady hand on the tiller as well. But they're going to face a number of challenges. And one time you and I talked, Josh, about kind of what it was like in my world, and essentially, without, I guess, betraying confidences, the more you saw of it, the less you liked it. Saw the difficulty of it, and that's what the new president will be facing. That things, I once laughingly said, this was about 15, 20 iterations of the executive committee ago. I said, if 10% of the things I propose get passed, I think I'm doing relatively well. That will be true for the new president, and people have strong opinions in terms of their beliefs about what we should do and where we should go. And so the new president will face the challenge of becoming part of a team, because the president doesn't have sort of unlimited power. What the president has is the capacity to provide guidance and build alliances and share history. But the president is not the emperor. So that person will be challenged with working with a team, some of whom have very disparate opinions. It will be difficult for whoever is elected, in short.
Yeah. What are some of the, I guess, the day-to-days that you do as president that I guess people may not be aware of?
Well, obviously the legal things. Talked to 3 lawyers this week already, much to my annoyance. My daughter, who's a lawyer, said she even hates lawyers. And so those are some of the things that basically nobody ever sees. Like I said, and shouldn't, to the degree that we can work things out and negotiate things and keep it from being an organizational crisis or a threat to our existence that's necessary. That's probably the biggest keystone thing I do. It's not a day-to-day, but there's some aspect of it every week, probably. The quasi-legal things, disciplinary matters, drug testing matters, interpretation of policy from a legal and quasi-legal standpoint. There's in USA powerlifting, additionally, I'm the contracting officer. I'm the only one. And there's important legal reasons for that, having to do with people contracting on our behalf historically. So for those of you out there, if you have a contract from USA Powerlifting and my name is not on the bottom of it, it's not a legitimate one. That's somebody else and somebody else's business. That's not us. Ultimately, every disciplinary matter that occurs with USA Powerlifting, whether it be code of conduct or safe sport or something else, um, all of those go out under my signature. I'm the place where the buck stops. By the same token, I'm the person that gets sued initially when that happens. I approve all the sanctions. That's a binding legal contract between USA Powerlifting and whoever that meet director is. I track, in a general sense, not a CPA, but in a general sense, what we're spending and where it goes. I'm the only one with spending authority in USA Powerlifting, and my delegates. I'm the executive director, for an example, is my delegate. But that necessitates that I know what we're doing financially, and um, I do a great deal of thinking about where we're going and what the implications of things are. Sometimes we make decisions that um, seem to be the right decision at the time, um, tactical decisions, if you will, but don't think strategically. What is it going to mean a year from now? What are the potential implications and what is the blowback going to be? And so I spend a good deal of time um, working in terms of that area. And um, I work in a lot of ways directly with the executive director. Heather is supremely confident and competent both. We were fortunate enough to get her. Um, she really, in a lot of ways, is a visionary. But by the same token, um, talking about what things may well mean and why things are this way is important. She's self-directed, obviously, or honestly, we wouldn't have hired her. Um, but people, everybody needs guidance, me included, obviously. And so that's one of the things I do. I talk to EC members, many of them multiple times every week, in terms of um, issues going on and the implications of them, the issues having to do with international participation in the future and how we're going to implement it with members of the IDFPA board. I am not the IDFPA president, by the way, but I am on the board.
Who is president? Just for people to know.
Polly is,
Okay.
but I do intend to remain on the IDFPA board.
After you're done being president.
Yes.
Okay. So you plan to stay involved in the sport?
Um, it's been my life. So yes, I don't know what that means. I don't train so much anymore. I don't directly coach people anymore, although I may pick that up again. Um, Funny artifact. My grandson is lifting in his first meet. It's next month.
Nice.
So third generation coming. So
Yeah, that's cool.
I do intend to be involved at some level.
Okay. Yeah, that's, I guess I kind of had my assumption that you would, but I guess I never heard you say it because, who knows, maybe you just, you could have just been so burnt out. You're like, washing my hands, I'm out. But, I think that's reassuring to me that you're going to stay involved. I mean,
One of the problems we've had over the years, um, in terms of the presidency, I'm the fifth president, is that we haven't. So we lost Brother Bennett, obviously, and so there are many times when I wish that I had his guidance, but um, leaving me basically saying, "What would Brother Bennett do?" But we've had a succession of presidents, and at the end of their presidency, many of them remained absent. Whether Dennis Brady remained involved, he still wrote beats. I still talk to him periodically, and that's been good. But other presidents haven't. Al Siegel has now passed away. Michael Overdeer is not out very much anymore. And so One of the shortcomings of us historically has been that me as the president, but the organization as a whole doesn't have access to that legacy. And I don't want that to occur for us at this point. Been here a long time and seen a lot of things. A lot of times, so many I can't even remember what they are. But I hope to be available to help people answer questions and why things are this way, and what I think they might do in the future as potential solutions. They can take them or not, obviously. I won't be in charge. I hope to be around and be a resource in the future.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it's safe to say, I can't speak for everybody, but I think it's safe to say that most people would appreciate that as well. Um, do you have any, let's see, I guess as you step away from president, do you have any final thoughts or messages to the membership as a whole that you'd like to share?
Yeah, probably several. The reason we exist and the reason we came into existence is as important today as it ever was. Um, Having the perspective of what I hope to be a long life, um, that living a long, healthy life, embracing a healthy lifestyle, being physically active, having good friends, and having a community is just as important as it ever was. Um, Staying true to the mission is important as it ever was. Continually looking at yourself, looking at what you did wrong, what you might improve, continues to be important for individuals, whether it be in their training and us as an organization. Um, and I'll say this in the NGB meeting, um, and and I'll say it here too. It's been an honor to serve, preserve the mission, to further the means and the objectives of the organization, and to build it from something small to something big and important nationally.
I got one question here. So assuming you're pulling your third deadlift for the win, what song are you listening to?
Eye of the Tiger.
Classic. No explanation, just that's the answer.
Enter Sandman for my first squat, though.
Okay. Any context, or is just those are the songs, move on?
Nope, always been the songs.
Okay. All right. Um, what questions did I not ask? So you obviously have perspective that nobody else does, of the role of president. Um, we kind of we didn't really plan this too far in advance here with what we're going to talk about. So is there anything I should have asked you that you would like to speak to, in terms of the presidency or the future presidents or the candidates running? Anything? Open floor, I guess. Closing arguments, if you will.
Um, Minnesota remains a challenge for us. We're at the Minnesota Supreme Court level, where they're addressing the issues of law. We think we're right. Obviously, the Court of Appeals affirmed that, but the Minnesota Supreme Court is examining it at this time. That will continue to be a challenge, I suspect, regardless of what they rule. And really, we are sort of at the nexus of thinking nationally about the issue of fairness in terms of sex-based sports, um, and and that will be a challenge. But by the same token, one of the things we haven't done is embrace all of the political superstructure around this argument, and so it's going to be important for USA Powerlifting to do its best to accommodate everybody as best they can while preserving the rights and privileges of everybody else. That's a delicate balancing act, and one we will continue to try. Closing arguments. Um, The new president will have to fit into the system. If they want to move it too far, too fast, like I suggested before, they'll probably tear it apart from the inside. They will have to be a public figure. They'll have to be approachable, and they'll have to have vision. If they don't embrace the mission as it started more than 40 years ago, there probably is no reason for exhaust to exist. Somebody else can do it, maybe as well as we can. So the commitment to that, the commitment to the athletes, the commitment to the grassroots level will be critical for them. And I guess that's all I got, Josh.
All right. Well, that's pretty much all I have too. I do want to say, there's been certain periods of time where you and I were not each other's favorite person. We had disagreements, but I always appreciated the fact that you were willing to discuss those things, and I think there's always a mutual respect there. And from my standpoint, and I guess on behalf of the entire organization, I do want to say I do appreciate you and everything that you have contributed to USA Powerlifting, and I do wish you luck, I guess, in your future endeavors, even though it sounds like you're not going too far.
Yeah. Thank you, Josh. As I said, it's been an honor to serve.
Awesome. Well, that's all I have, Larry. I appreciate you being on, and it looks like we'll be seeing you down the road.
All right. Take it easy.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode of the Powerlifting and Power Ballads podcast, please remember to subscribe and share it with your friends.